Anxiety. Everyone's heard of it, and I'm fairly positive everyone's experienced it at least once. I know that I have. When I mention the term mental illness, I'm sure many of you imagine insane people talking to themselves or drooling from the mouth. What if I told you that mental illness is so much simpler than that? There are many different varying degrees of mental illness, from chronic cases like schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder to simple anxiety and phobias. Look around you. Look at all the faces sitting before you. What if I told you that what some of these people have a different classifiable degree of a mental illness? 1 out of 4 people have a mental illness. 1 out of 4. That means that out of the 4 people sitting in the front of the classroom, at least one of them has a different mental illness. I know that I would be considered one of those people. I'm here today to talk about mental illnesses, specifically anxiety disorders, and try to erase the stigma that's associated with each. I have an anxiety disorder, one which has impaired my life in more ways than I can count. I have what is called specific phobia disorder. I know that all the anxiety disorders out there seem more manageable, maybe even silly. But I can promise you that what I feel is not silly. Bees. I have a crippling, life-impairing, intense fear of bees. I'm not even sure how it started. I just remember about 3 years ago going into my backyard and seeing a bee and having a full-blown panic attack. I could feel my throat close up as all the air was vacuumed from my lungs. I could feel sharp pains akin to glass cutting into my sides. For years this has plagued me. I went from a fear of bees to a fear of flying insects. I went from a fear of insects to a fear of summer. I went from a fear of summer to a fear of spring. I went from a fear of spring to a fear of warmth. I went from fearing an actual, tangible object that could inflict harm onto me to fearing a temperature. I know you may be thinking, so what? It's just a fear. Get over it. Get over it. Would you tell a person with the flu to just get over it? Or an old man with a limp and a cane to just grow up and get over yourself? No, of course not. That would be absurd. However, all of those things were said to me, and people thought that was okay. A study conducted in 2006 found that 3 out of 4 people with a mental illness have experienced stigma. Stigma is defined to be a mark of disgrace, which sets a person apart from the rest of their group. Along with their original mental illness, 25% of those found to have experienced stigma also experienced depression. What happened to them was not their fault, nor biology's fault. This was society's fault. People who have experienced depression related to stigma then reported feelings of helplessness, shame, hopelessness, and distress. Of course, specific phobia disorder isn't the only anxiety disorder out there. The most common is generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, which is classified as having a constant state of uneasiness and uncertainty, persisting for more than 6 months. Another disorder, commonly confused with generalized anxiety disorder, is panic disorder. This disorder is associated with a person experiencing random but intense panic attacks. OCD is another anxiety disorder which a person has persistent thoughts which consume their mind until they act upon them through compulsions. Like Martin Luther King, I have a dream. I have a dream where one day people can realize that an illness to the brain is just as serious as an illness to the lungs or the heart. No, we may not be dying, but we feel like it. We feel like that every time that crippling bastard named anxiety takes over our lives. I feel like it every time I have a panic attack over realizing winter is over. Some illnesses are preventable, others aren't. People with depression can't help that they have amounts of serotonin lower than normal. People with schizophrenia can't help that they have an overflux of dopamine. And I can't help that I have anxiety, due to my sympathetic nervous system having a constant riot in my insides. Like all diseases, anxiety has a cause, biologically and neurologically based. Anxiety in its most general form comes from the part of the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is a small, almost lima bean-sized piece of the brain which controls the center of fear and aggression. The amygdala is kind of like the body's own personal smoke alarm. It alerts you of dangers even when none are present. People with generalized anxiety disorder have an overactive amygdala, or rather an amygdala with an increased size. Take these balloons, for example. Each of these balloons represents a brain. These bottles represent a danger that is present. And this powder represents the amount of gray matter in the amygdala. As you can see, this one has far more than this one. This is to demonstrate just how much having an increased body part can affect a person in an extreme way. Almost there. So as you can see, the amygdala that has a larger amount of gray matter has a much greater response than the amygdala with a smaller amount of gray matter. So this proves that just having a larger body part of the brain can increase much greater reaction to the danger that is present. These people can't help what happens to them. Everyone who suffers a mental illness cannot control the size of certain brain parts, or how much of certain neurotransmitters are released into the body. Anxiety was originally beneficial. Back in caveman times, anxiety was used to prepare us for the flight or flight situation from predators. Of course, today it isn't that easy. We can't kill the things that stress us, and it's getting increasingly difficult to flee from them. The hormones like cortisol, which were released into our body from our stressors, have no way to relax, so they linger. The longer the stress hormones stay in our body, the more stressed out we feel, until it becomes an almost persistent feeling of anxiety. This is one way that evolution has failed us. Besides depression, anxiety disorders are the most common type of psychological disorders. There are countless types of this classification of disorders. Generalized anxiety disorder, OCD, PTSD, panic disorder, and my vice, phobia disorder. 1 out of 4 people, 25% of the population has a mental illness. That's an overwhelming amount. Just imagine everything you like to do during the summer. Hiking, kayaking, or God, even having a picnic. Someday, I might be able to do these things, but not today. I, just like everyone with an illness, am trying my absolute hardest to fight it. I walk my dog every day, and I can feel the anxiety lessening. I sit out and play with my little cousin, and I can feel the shards of glass cutting just a little bit shallower. I have a dream, one where people like me can live out their lives just like everyone else. I have a dream that medicine will cure me, and that people can take such medicine without feeling completely insane. I have a dream where everyone can own up to their own weaknesses and live life without hiding who they are. I have specific phobia disorder, and I am waiting for my dream to come true. Thank you.